Okay, we're back on.
We're back on. We're talking about the hurricane warnings and the storm surge warnings, which will be coming into play in 2015, which really gives us a way to cover the full scope of the storm and really the bigger impacts. For example, we may have just had hurricane warnings up for the Jersey Shore, but you would have had storm surge warnings that existed all the way up past Boston. All right? Because of the component of the water. Even though you wouldn't have the wind, you'd still have the water rise. And that is oftentimes the most dangerous thing. That's what killed everybody in Galveston. On what started out as a perfect sunny day, where people were swimming and bathing in the water, wound up to be incredibly deadly for what was really the premier aristocratic city in the South at the time. Big port city, lots of life. It took it apart and wiped out 8,000 people.
Do you think people actually heed your warnings, or people? Do you find that sometimes they're jaded and they say, "Oh, you're being alarmist about it"?
You know what? I think there's too many people giving too many messages these days. When I go cover a storm in Belize or in Mexico, there's one statement from one government. That's it. Here's what we need you to do, and everybody gets busy doing their thing. There's also a much bigger appreciation, I think, of understanding your risk. Belize City, I thought, here's this city, basically third world, like New Orleans, sitting right or below sea level slightly, that's going to get inundated. And yet these people are doing what they can to protect their homes and get out of harm's way. They literally just leave and come back. They know that's just a way of life. And I don't think we have that in this kind of, there's not either enough respect for the message, or there's just too many messages. I just think there's just too much information. It's on radio. It's on my phone now. It's on my computer. I get alerts. It's on the Weather Channel. It's on ABC, NBC. Everybody's telling me all this stuff. And sometimes the messages aren't succinct. They're convoluted and they're different. And so now you got a viewer going, well, which one do I believe? So the good news is we've been around for a while, and our message hasn't changed. We do the weather. We don't hype the weather. We do the weather. We let everybody know what their impacts are going to be. And when they come to us, I know they're getting excellent information from remarkable meteorologists.
Have you ever been wrong?
Oh, hell yeah.
Really.
Oh, my gosh. Standing in front of this Toys R Us sign that said something big's about to happen, which I was playing off of. Here in New York City, we were expecting a huge snowstorm, a foot of snow in New York. Giuliani shuts down the city before the first flakes even fall. Nothing happened. Oh, my gosh. Talk about eating crow. Just this past season. This one, I'm not going to... I bought into New York, but I didn't buy into the D.C. one. I show up in D.C. Big snowstorm, supposedly. It rained with a little wet snow. But yet they shut down the city. You play with very little change. Think about it. So it snowed and rained, which means the temperature was fighting the dynamics to stay at 32 degrees, but yet there was warm air coming in off the ocean. So it was constantly fighting that. So you went from downtown Washington, D.C., right? You went right from the Capitol off to the west side of the Beltway. There was 4 inches of snow on the ground. And then you went 50 miles, and there was 17, 18 inches of snow on the ground. Some places got 40 inches in the mountains. So forecasting sometimes where that rain snow line is still on the East Coast can be very, very difficult. Very difficult. That ocean land interface, especially the way the Northeast sticks out like that, are just very complicated, complex for forecasting. And we can be wrong. We can still be wrong.
It's sort of legendary that when you show up at a location that people are saying, oh no, something bad is about to happen. Do you feel that, and do you also have to keep that in mind?
Even when I go on vacation, actually. what's going on. Even down at Costa Rica the other day, I was down in Costa Rica for the Weather Channel just doing Earth Day coverage. So really a nice, hey, feel-good stuff. People are like, what are you doing down here? What's going to happen down here, that's kind of cool, to be honest with you. I find that flattering. And I do want to be where the disaster is going to be because I want to get people out of harm's way. That's my job. They expect me to be there. And that's how my life has changed. I went from a 22-year-old kid hired at the Weather Channel who was just an adrenaline junkie when I got out in my first few storms to now realizing that people actually rely on my information. When I'm ticked off that a mayor has not evacuated a certain area, I'm going to say it. Whether I'm right or wrong, that's how I feel. And people can relate to that. So they expect me to be there. They expect me to take them through it. And I'm going to do that.
When was the first time that you were recognized almost as a celebrity? Do you remember?
Ooh. I mean, there's always like recognition. But I guess the time that I remember the most was probably 1996 when this lady walked up to me on the beach and she said, "You know what, Jim, I know it's going to be really bad here, but we are so glad that you're here to take us through it." And I was like, wow. That's when I really said, this isn't about the adrenaline anymore. You have purpose. You have purpose.
At times, too, do you find that people are sticking around because you're there so they could see you in action, or other times?
Yeah. I mean, it's really amazing, especially when we show up on the beach. I mean, to do that first couple shots and people realize you're there. Nowadays with Twitter, I actually just announce it, but they see where you're going to set up, and people are just kind of drawn to that kind of thing. They like to see how we do it and what we say and what we do, and it's so cool because you get a whole group of people off the set. And I'll do my broadcast, or whoever I'm working with will do their thing. And they'll clap, and they'll be like, yeah, And I kind of feel like I did a good job. So that's really, people are so sweet. They bring us food. I was in Lincoln, Nebraska. It was supposed to be a big snowstorm. Instead of the 12 inches that we got 4 inches. Either way, 15 people brought us food that day, our crew. 15 people. Anything from donuts to coffee to steak. This guy brought us fillets. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. To burritos. It was unbelievable. So people are just so sweet. That is absolutely my favorite part of the job, is just going out and meeting people. It is very, very, very flattering. I really enjoy that.
What's the most common thing that people say to you when they meet you?
Jim, it's your fault. This weather's your fault. Okay, I know. Give me a nickel. There's a lot of that going on, but there's a lot of, hey, we really love what you do. We really love the Weather Channel. A lot of Weather Channel fans out there. A lot of Weather Channel fans.
You're sort of a quiet bunch.
Yeah, we're just kind of the little engine that could, and we just keep rolling along. But like I said to you earlier, the weather speaks for itself. We've always just kind of let the weather do its thing, and do we have trouble at first figuring out what we should show on the TV? Yes, but I think we've kind of figured that out now. When the weather's quiet, we can show shows, and these are good shows. I saw some of our new shows come out, and I'm like, holy cow, these are good. And then some of the balancing that with active weather. Because when the weather's dangerous and we got to get people out of harm's way, okay, the show can wait. Here's what's going on. We got a tornado warning for, and we figured it out. And now the web, and now the mobile access, the way people can get that information, is just extraordinary.
And how do you play into that? Are you very conscious of social media and the web?
I am. I love my Twitter account. I'm a big Twitter. I'm like, look, okay, there's all these things, Google, Twitter, Facebook. You can do one of them. I'm not going to be dominated by all of these. I'm not going to spend my entire day and my days off doing Twitter and Facebook and Google and keeping up with all this. So I like Twitter. It's short, it's sweet, it's to the point, which I like. I can show pictures, and I'd like to say that I've developed a nice little following on Twitter. But what I started doing along the way was I started putting out every little tornado warning that came out. Tornado warning's been issued for. Oh. So then, when the next one comes out, and I'm on an off day, or I'm with my kids on a weekend, Jim, you didn't tell me about this storm. So I'm like, oh God, what have I done here? So I needed to kind of tail back on it a little bit and say, all right, look. I mean, but my heart was there, all right? I mean, I did it because I really wanted to get people out of harm's way, but I can't be there 24/7. I mean, I just can't be. So I think it's a great way to share my world with my viewers and connect, viewers with the actual talent. It really is. I mean, we were in Costa Rica the other day, and these frogs they have down there, these coffee frogs. They have yellow eyes. So I took a nice picture of them. You pop it through Instagram, go out on Twitter. Everybody gets to share that with you. It's awesome.
What about the real-time aspect? Do you use it also to see
absolutely.
What's going
on? If there's a tornado that I think is going to occur or be a very dangerous one, long track, then the message changes. Then the all caps start flying out, the hashtags, that kind of thing.
Do you search for information too from people who may be there?
Yeah, absolutely. Or I always ask people to tag me on stuff that's going on. I'll say it on the air. So I'll be on the air saying, hey, look, you know what? Tweet me pictures if you see this thing or have seen any damage with this. Tag me on it. And people love to help out. It's very rare that you get somebody who just sends you bad pictures, but there's always that. But I think the majority of the time there are a lot of genuine people out there, and I'm going to keep my faith in the humans. I think there's a lot more good than there is bad.
Oh, it's really changed since you started. How has the technology part of it changed for you?
Oh my goodness, especially in the field. To be able to go out now with my phone and literally have a computer in my phone to look up really the data that I need is extraordinary. The question is where do you find the time to do it? Because you're always doing live shots. So instead of just doing tops and bottoms, now we'll do top, 5 after MSNBC, 10 after CNBC, quarter after a Seattle affiliate, back down to the bottom of the hour. So that's very little time to look at the computer. Then somebody wants to come out and talk to you and meet you or bring you coffee, or your producer wants to tell you about something that's going on next hour. You have to do a phone interview with the radio station. I mean, it can get nuts. It can absolutely get crazy. But that's what we do. That's what we do. It's the Super Bowl. All right, you're not gonna walk out of the stadium during the Super Bowl. You're gonna play the game.
And what about the technology in terms of when you first started and the cameras and things like that? Have those gotten lighter? Have those gotten better for you?
Well, you know what? Cameras, guys are still carrying around the big cameras. They're a little bit smaller. Some of them use the smaller HD cams, and I think they look great. My thing is motion. I like showing people around. I like walking around in the shot so people can see. Because, one little, like we're doing right here, one little shot is not going to show everybody what's in this entire room. And if what's in this entire room is part of my weather story, I got to move around. You're only as good as your cameraman, really. He's going to make you look, or she's going to make you look great. And you have to realize that they're probably going to have it a little bit harder than you, because they got to lug the gear, they got to set up, they got to keep it dry. They got to get on you for the shot. They got to hear what you're saying. If you're talking about something in your hand, you got to make sure you hold it steady so they can zoom in on it and pull back in time. There has to be a great relationship. And, nowadays we will just kind of pluck cameraman on. Now that I've been through the system a few times with NBC, we see, some of the same guys out there. But I just worked with this guy down in Costa Rica. His name was Carlos. He was fabulous. Fabulous editor, fabulous cameraman, suggests things. I know he's the artist. He sees through the camera. So, we had this great, dude, you tell me what looks good. If I need to turn around and do this shot again, let's do it again. Yeah, well, I wanted to rack zoom on that or something. When you get that going on, it makes it so much better for the viewer. It really does. It makes the story and the telling of it and the words just so much bolder and stronger. So it is key. I would rather have a good cameraman than a dry suit. All right? Because I know I'm going to be wet for 8 hours, but there's going to be a hell of a good story out there.
Let's talk about that. What do you pack when you're going off to
Oh,
weather
my
events?
goodness. Well, you need to ask Rachel Ray. We just did a whole show on that, actually, on Rachel Ray. Unfortunately, it was airing on Friday, which is the day that they found all the, got the gunman up in Boston. So I don't know how many people saw it, but you know what? Who cares? They got this guy and those guys. That's huge. Gosh, I mean, this one guy had a wetsuit on one time when he was out there. So, oh my God, that's a brilliant idea. Unless it's not raining, then you get cold, or you boil if it's hot, if the sun comes out. So I did a search and rescue, swift water rescue with these guys up in North Carolina on the Nantahala River. Just great group of guys, and they taught me how to get in the water, proper technique, how to swim out of it, and things like that. And they were all in dry suits because the water was freezing. It was like 40 degrees. And you can wear clothing or thermals underneath it, and you essentially put on this rubber suit that goes all the way up to your neck. And so I said, ooh, I got to have one of those. So I got one for Sandy, and I went through Sandy. Remember how cold it was? It was 50 degrees. It was raining horizontal, but I'm dry in this dry suit. Awesome. That's the key, to be dry. Because you can't just walk back to your little hotel room and change when you're wet. You got to stay out there. Food, snacks, light sticks, headlamp, obviously computer, chargers, water purification. Because you never know. You just never know where you're going to wind up. Our LL Bean Weather Channel jackets, because I still got to be logoed. Because what's interesting about the dry suit is I could actually put that on and then put my Weather Channel jacket over the top of it, so it looked like I was just in my gear. That's about it. A lot of chargers, a lot of computers, cell phones, backup cell phone.
How do you protect all that stuff? The cell phones and the chargers and the cameras?
Dry case. Drycase.com, great company. This guy actually sent me stuff. He goes, Cantore, I see you out in the weather. Put this on your phone. I'm like, oh my God, this is huge. It's vacuum. Basically, you vacuum pack your phone in this case, and you can plug the adapter in, have an earpiece, and boom, you're fully operational. Huge. You can play with your phone, do everything you would with it.
Have you had a lot of equipment ruined over the years?
I mean, that the Katrina was awful. I mean, there must have been $100,000 worth of equipment at least ruined. But I don't blame the weather for that. I blame bad planning. We should have brought that equipment in that night, But again, this was like day 9. We were exhausted. And sometimes you just, it was just a miscalculation. And I can't catch everything.
Have you or your crew ever been injured while covering a storm?
The satellite truck driver in Katrina was cut up a little bit, but it wasn't bad. I've had a couple branches hit my head. No. The key is to broadcast the story and not become the story. So we do a pretty good job of doing that. I mean, the biggest fear I have in the field is not the flooding, it's not the storm surge, it's not the wind, it's the doggone lightning. That you don't have a second chance with lightning. That's the thing I fear the most.
Have you ever seen someone get hit by it?
I've never seen anyone get hit by it, but I've seen bolts come down within 30 yards of me, and I'm like, good God in heaven, we're done. Everybody in the truck. That's it. I don't even care if I'm in mid-sentence. During Ike in Galveston, my cameraman was standing under this cabana doing a broadcast, and this thing's going like this. I'm like, I am not going to be responsible if that thing falls on him. I'm pulling the shot. I'm pulling it. The problem is we didn't have another one set up. So there was a tremendous delay in our broadcast. And so, I feel a little responsible for that. I feel bad about that. But no one's dying on my watch. It's not happening. Not when I could have prevented it.
Has the Weather Channel ever said don't go someplace, or it's too dangerous, or you want to go someplace and you can't?
No, they pretty much leave that up to my judgment. We won't go into the surge zone. I mean, on purpose. We know that. The battery was a good example. I knew the water was going to come up. I knew I was going to be standing in water, but I also knew I had a 15-foot place to get to, and plus our cars were at the highest point. So, unless the water came in so much higher than it was forecast to, we were fine, and we were fine. The problem is okay, great. Now that you're at the highest point and you're surrounded by water, how are you going to get out? So we had a little trouble getting back.
And how did you finally manage it?
We just went through every little street, nook and cranny that we could. Once the water started coming down a little bit, we got through and got back around to our hotel. But of course, you get back there's no power. You're flashlighting it, headlamping it, light sticking it, whatever you can get your way in, find your way to your room. I've taken showers before with bottled water. Baby wipes, that's a huge thing when you're on a storm. Keep keep whatever kind of hygiene you can. Brush your teeth with bottled water, You just got to keep going. I mean, it's not going to be pretty. I don't mind having a scruff or a little facial hair out there. It's part of I'm not out there looking pretty. It's about telling the story.
Have you ever not had a place to stay?
Oh, yeah. We slept in our car in Katrina for 4 nights. Rita was the worst, though, because I left the window cracked. I woke up, and I mean, there were mosquitoes all over me. And I just went, and there was just blood everywhere. They had their way with me. That was the worst one. Louisiana, those mosquitoes mean business. So if you're ever out at 5 a.m. in the morning in Cameron Parish, Louisiana, you better be in a full bodysuit.
Lately, there's been a trend to start naming storms as well as the hurricane.
You mean the Weather Channel naming storms, winter storms?
And other networks too. It's sort of
I haven't seen other networks do it.
Stormwatch 2012, that kind of stuff.
Well, that's different though. That's kind of like hypey stuff. The Europeans in the '60s started naming storms. They actually named low pressures and high pressure systems. A lot of people didn't know that. Studies have been done. A name storm is a more recognizable storm. People recognize storms with a name. They pay attention to it more. The difference is that was naming hurricanes was NOAA protocol, Weather Service protocol, not Weather Channel protocol. So we kind of stepped out there a little bit by naming them ourselves. I didn't really know anything about this until the day they announced it. And then that night, they're like, oh, by the way, Jim, Philadelphia wants to do a live interview with you on set talking about naming storms. I'm like, what do you mean? I don't even know anything about this. It's not my baby. So let the person who decided to do it talk about it. I like the idea. I like it a lot. If I was in charge of it, though, I would not have done it that way. I would have probably had viewer involvement with the names, and I probably would have consulted the National Weather Service, because at the end of the day, we are on the same team, and we cannot have dissension in the ranks. None. So for me, being the old school, they're on my team. The Weather Service is on my team. I don't want to upset the apple cart. I would have probably gone that avenue first. But I like the idea, and I like the Weather Channel's doing it. And, I would probably tweak a few things if it was my, deal. But at the end of the day, I think storms like Nemo proved that it can work. It can work, because everybody will remember Nemo.
I guess the trick is just making sure everyone's calling it that, even if they're not.
Yeah, I think to go back to the Weather Service and talk to them a little bit maybe as to how can we work this out. you guys up and getting viewers involved and actually naming the storm beforehand. Like I thought, for example, during the sequestration, Snowquester was really a pretty good name for a storm. The one that was supposed to hit DC.
Yeah.
So, but I thought that was brilliant. Anyway, the problem is I don't ever want to have a them versus us. And there was a little bit of that between the Weather Service and the Weather Channel, and also us and local media. Local media didn't take it very well either. But at the end of the day, there's no malice intent for us naming storms. I stand behind my company. I like the idea a lot, and I just, like I said to you, would do it a little differently.
Let's talk about some coverage that you've done of non-weather related events. Space Shuttle Discovery launch.
Wow, to see the old man go up in space one more time, that was pretty awesome. And then to be talking to John Hope, who was my mentor back at the Weather Channel, that was kind of cool. That was really the first time we've done anything like that. It's all about science, It's all part of science. And to hear, I think people don't realize is you hear all of a sudden you see the shuttle go up, you don't hear anything. Then you finally catch up with the sound waves because you have to broadcast so far away from the actual launch site. But that was really cool. I will never forget that. A lot of nervous energy, because I grew up during the Challenger. As a matter of fact, I was at college, ready to go on air for our noon broadcast when the Challenger blew up. And we were all like in shock.
Did you do anything on the air at that time?
I think we canceled our show, because we're a little local TV station doing local news. I don't know if we would have done that now, but back then we did. But I remember 9/11, having to go on the air the next day. It was perfect weather. I'm like, what the heck am I going to talk about? My friggin' heart is in my stomach here. I'm dying. And what could I possibly say? But you go and you suck it up and you do your job.
Where were you on 9/11?
I was in Atlanta. I was off that day, so I watched it all unfold in my house. But then the next day I had to go on the air.
Were there any rules for what you could or couldn't say at that point on the air? Could you talk about it?
I think they said something to us all about, don't talk about it or don't really say anything about it. I don't really remember, actually. All I know is I was numb on the air. I was numb.
Okay, going back to some other coverage, you've done the PGA tournaments.
Yeah, we've done some work with the PGA. The best one, though, is the Derby. I'll never forget doing my first Kentucky Derby with NBC Sports. So I'm out on the infield, I'm out there in the infield, and I'm talking about when's the rain going to stop? When's the rain going to stop? And I'm like, there's the back edge of it on radar. It should be stopping. And I'm like, oh my God, Sam, come to me. I can see the sun coming out. There's the sun. It's going to be over here in just a few minutes. And so they come to me. My mic dies. And my worst moment on television was doing the Winter Classic with NBC Sports. First of all, to be asked to do this is a wonderful honor. I mean, you're around all these sports guys. It's like a frat party, but everybody is just so professional, and they have one job to do and get it done and execute it. So it's great to be a part of that kind of energy. Anyway, I had to make the call for the city of Pittsburgh on January 1st for the Winter Classic. I'm watching this all day. I'm watching all the fronts coming through. There's nothing behind this front. There's no evidence of any precipitation at all, but yet the models were hinting at something popping up. So they moved the Classic to 8 p.m. on a Sunday night, which for TV was awesome. The problem is there's this little thing called post-frontal precipitation, which, to make this short and sweet without getting into any detail, is basically rain after the front goes by. And I didn't really buy that on the models, even though they were hinting at it. So sometimes you have to go back in post and realize what you missed. Anyway, I blew the call. I said it wasn't going to rain. Literally, from the time that I walked out to be on set, 50 minutes before air, because I was at the top of the show, what's the weather going to be like, boom, 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 to now an hour. So we're into the show now for about 10, 12 minutes, or past the first period. Boom, all of a sudden I start getting a couple drops of rain. I'm like, ooh. So I got no data. I'm out here in the stadium. Try getting Wi-Fi or a data out in the stadium. Look at the radar. It ain't happening. So I call the weather channel. I'm like, what's going on, Mark? Oh, I don't know. Just like a few showers. Nothing, no big deal. I'm like, so all right. They come back to me. Yeah, just a few showers. Sometimes that happens, because there's a cold front at the surface, and there's another one a little bit higher in the atmosphere. When that one comes through, sometimes we can get a few showers with that. But it shouldn't last long at all. Just a few spits. All of a sudden, the rain starts coming down heavier, and I knew. That's when I knew. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so screwed. Now I can't get a hold of anybody. I can't look at a radar. I'm like, you can't come to me. I can't see the radar. But I'm just like, this is a disaster. I blew the forecast. I felt awful. It was like dropping the ball. Winning touchdown and you drop the ball. Are you freaking kidding me? Anyway.
Did you get a lot of flack for that?
Yeah, I did. But I deserved it. But you got to move on. You got to let it go. But I had a hard time with that one because I really, really love doing that. I really love being the go-to guy. And I want to be right. I really want to be right. But you can't be all the time. But next time I see the hint of post-frontal precipitation, I'll be looking at it a lot more closely. I promise you.
A lesson learned.
Yes.
You were also at the London Olympics in 2020.
Oh, it's great. I love Al Michaels. Working with Al is so easy. He's just one of the guys. And I was out at Stonehenge, and so my first comment to him was, Al, I finally found something as old as you are, and I want to show it to you. So he loved it. He just plays off that kind of thing.
What is the Cantore factor?
The Cantore snuggle factor? Is that what you're talking about?
No, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, the Cantore snuggle factor was something I developed when we were doing tri-state weather. Our first attempt at local weather was with this product, where we could basically do live weather from the Weather Channel during the local on the 8s for everybody else across the nation. So we would take that market and do a live weather insert for New York City. And so that was my responsibility on Saturday and Sunday mornings. And it was pretty cool. People really liked watching it. So I just came up with this. I mean, when it was cold, I just kind of came up with this thing called the Cantore snuggle factor. If it's like below 0, it's a 10. If it's 80, it's a 2. You don't want to be snuggling up to somebody when it's that hot. So that was where that came from. And it was fun. People loved it. Somebody made me an art, I'll never forget it, on Christmas Day, this animation they put my head with a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and antlers, and I loved it. I thought it was great. And so we put the snuggle factor number on the animation. And boy, they didn't like that. Oh, they didn't like that. That was over the edge. Today, that'd be a great idea. People would love it.
A few other appearances that you've made over the years. You were on the David Letterman show.
Oh, that was great during Sandy. I've always watched Letterman. I grew watching Letterman, and so we're in Sandy coverage, and I mean literally in Sandy coverage. Jim, you got to go do Letterman today. So you're going to go right from your disheveled look to the studio. Of course, nobody's in the audience. There's no power in New York. There's no mass transit. So I'm doing a show with Dave, and nobody's in the audience. But either way, I was just going to go have a conversation with this man, and I was looking forward to it. And we were just talking shop. That's all. Just talking weather. But I remember standing in the spot they have you standing before you walk out on stage. And I thought to myself, wow, to think about the people that have stood in this spot. You know, that just kind of pumped me up. And so I went out and did it. And I said, I got to make sure I acknowledge Paul, because I like that when they acknowledge Paul over there. So I gave him the big hello. And then we just chatted about the weather and Sandy and climate change.
And what did you talk about? What about those?
Well, he wanted to find out about the storm. You know, he wanted to talk about how big a deal this was and how, you know, impactful it was. And then, you know, everybody's always looking to blame everything on climate change. And I was like, you know, Davey, we just can't take individual storms and say, oh, that's climate change. Now, could climate change induce more of these storms in the future? Sure. That's how you have to look at that. But, you know, it's just stuff like that. Talk about the storm. You know, how do you detox? What are you going to do after this? And I said, sleep. you know, it was kind of fun. But, you know, it was weird because you kind of look out every once in a while and there's just nobody. I mean, there's just nobody out there. I mean, and how many times have we seen the cameras when he's doing a show out in the audience, just full of people? And sometimes all the shenanigans that are going on out there. So it was fun. It was a great experience. I mean, I've always wanted to be on it, and to actually be able to do it was really, really awesome. Because I'm like, this guy was a weatherman. Like, for God's sakes, he started as a weatherman. Why isn't the Weather Channel on David Letterman? This is terrible. I mean, that's not the way I wanted to go on the show, but you know what? If that's the way we're going to do it, that's the way we're going to do it.
You mentioned climate change. Is there a Weather Channel policy as to how you talk about it?
Policy. I mean, I think we all kind of share the same mission statement, and the climate is changing, and the fact that you know, there's a lot of certain uncertainty that remains with it, and there's a lot of new information. But as a company, it's up to us to educate people as to what we know and what we think some of the ramifications could be to them. As an example, sea level rise. We know the water's rising on the coast. We know that. We know the ice is melting in the Arctic. We know that. We can see that. We know the Earth's temperature is warmed. We know that. We now know, as of recently, that the oceans are absorbing some of the CO2. And they're absorbing some of the heat. So what that means going forward, I don't know. But the point is we don't know everything about climate change. And it's different than meteorology, because climate deals from 10 days to 10 billion years. You know, weather deals with 10 days down to 10 seconds. And that's what we have all majored in, essentially. But I think it's important because there is a link between the two. And it's up to the Weather Channel to make that link.
You've hosted a lot of documentaries and other shows on the Weather Channel. Do any stand out for you? I know that you really love
I really love doing Cantore stories. I mean, it was to me always, I've been to these places when it's a disaster. What about when it's not? I mean, why do these people live here? If it's, you know, the Everglades, the bayou in Mississippi, well, why would you live Barrow, Alaska? But you just run into so many unique people. I mean, I just love people. I love meeting people. I love seeing the way they are. I mean, you always come into we got down to Bow Bridge, Louisiana. Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. And this guy has we get off the plane, he's got a shrimp boil for us. I mean, shrimp, potatoes, corn, just a huge spread, just pours it out on the table, and we're just chowing down. I'm telling you, I'll never forget that as long as I live. My plate with the shrimp shells, when I was done, was probably this high. I just pounded it. It was so good. But that kind of that kind of good in people is just so wonderful to be around.
How do you find those stories?
My producers. We got good producers. And they find these kind of things and like, well, maybe Cantore could do that. I'm like, yes. And that's why I love Costa Rica. We just went down there for Earth Day. Costa Rica is an incredibly forward-thinking country in terms of where they are with sustainability. In other words, they rely 90% on renewable energy. 90%. They have no army. All their money goes into education and tourism. They have a 98% literacy rate. It's pretty good. And they're huge into ecotourism, which is where we were at that ecotourism park. So, a country that basically took their trees and forests down to 30% of where they were is now back up to 57% because they're reforesting. And they're realizing the gains they can make there. They're using wind power, solar power, diesel, cleaner burning fuels. They're thinking about geothermal because their goal is to become the first country to be carbon neutral. By 2021 is their goal. It's going to be tough.
That's ambitious,
but they can do it. And it's a lot of these smaller countries that actually have joined in and said, we're this is our goal. Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Costa Rica.
You're also the host of some of the When Weather Changed history documentaries.
I haven't hosted that.
Oh, you
that.
didn't?
Mm-mm.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right. But that's a great show.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good example of a great show, When Weather Changed. I mean, when you think about D-Day and you think about crossing over that English Channel in the middle of a storm and what's waiting for you when you get on those beaches, can you imagine that? I mean, so not only do we have to tell that part of the story, but also the weather angle. And who had to make that forecast back when data was so scarce and modeling was unheard of. There's no weather modeling back then. You just had to know how to couple pressure systems together, where the pressure falls and rises, and hope that it would be stormy where you forecast it was stormy. Now models show us almost exactly where the low is going to be. 3 hours out, 6 hours out, 12 hours out. It's amazing.
Do you think there's a weather event that happened during your tenure that also changed history, or that it's certainly impacted?
I think there's been a couple, actually. I think that Andrew was the first one. All right. Here is now a Category 5 hurricane that acted like a 30-mile wide tornado in Homestead, Florida. Flattened everything. And what changed there is building codes for Florida and now for the East Coast and the Gulf. That was huge for that. The tornado outbreak in 2011 in Alabama. I think the Storm Prediction Center realized that when we see something that clear cut, that many days out, that's that well forecast, we need to use different wording, different ways of communicating that message to the public. Instead of there's a chance of tornadoes on Tuesday, there's a chance of tornadoes on Wednesday, there's a chance of tornadoes on Thursday, there's a chance of deadly tornadoes, long track tornadoes that have the potential to level homes. You see the difference in the message? All right. So that kind of stuff came out of 2011. Katrina. Oh, wow. The water can get big if it's not a Cat 5 hurricane. Yes. Size does matter. Size in a storm matters. And we learned that size plays a huge role in how much storm surge you're going to have, especially in an area where the water can't get out, like the Gulf of Mexico. Once you start piling it, it's not going to get back out. It's going to go up. And that's what happened with Katrina. And that's why we had historic storm surge. We also realized in Katrina how much work we needed to do in terms of reacting to a disaster as a country. I mean, that was just simply awful at all levels of government. Awful. There's no other way to say it. That was embarrassing to our country. We know we can do better, and we have done better.
Did you witness that in the other storms you covered after that?
What was interesting is Ike. When I was in Ike in 2008, or actually it was a storm before that. Okay, a great example is Gustav. It was a storm that happened a couple years after Katrina. The way they evacuated New Orleans and that they got both lanes open. They did a contraflow and got people out of New Orleans. Awesome. I think, in all honesty, the new levee and pump system that they have in New Orleans is another modern miracle. The second most amount of concrete that we've ever used in this country is right there in New Orleans,
Okay.
next to the Hoover Dam project. And the way that system works, and it's not a panacea. It's not going to protect you from everything. But, a Category 1, possibly a Category 2 storm, I really feel New Orleans is going to do okay. I really do. Once we get into the 3s and 4s where the water just gets too high, if a Katrina came along again and took the same track as Isaac did last year, which was just west of New Orleans, I think we'd be in a lot of trouble. So again, it's not a panacea, but for the storms that come and clip, and the smaller ones and the weaker ones, it gives you a chance. It gives you a chance. It's really a wonderful system how it works. The gates, the canals, the pumps. It's amazing.
Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing currently. What is a typical week?
I'm sorry, I just thought of another.
Right.
Sandy is a great example. Here's a storm that meteorologically may have been metamorphosizing into a hybrid, into a storm that's not purely tropical. But yet, we really don't have a way of saying, even though it's going to not be what it was, it's on its way to being a moth or a cat or a butterfly, it's still the same nasty caterpillar. Okay? So we have to warn that way. And it changed the process, the policy of how now we will be warning about storms like that.
That's great.
Anyway, so Sandy to me was a big game. You're talking about the game changers: Katrina, severe weather outbreak, Sandy, Andrew. Those are big game changers in my tenure.
So talk about what you're doing today. What does a current week in your life look like?
Well, it changes by the week. This is the first year, actually, and really this has been an amazing year. I have not been in studio 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, on air, at all this year. So whether it be a couple of weeks of vacation that have been thrown in there, or these assignments that I'm getting, I just haven't been. I'm doing a lot of different things. It's fun, actually. I'm enjoying it. I don't like doing the same thing all the time. That's why going out in the field was always appealing to me. Be it studio, okay, we'll go out in the field. Sometimes when I went out in the field too much, I'm like, okay, I'm itching to get back in the studio. So.
But you don't feel that yet here in what you're doing now?
No. But a typical, if the weather's quiet, or we are in preparation mode for a storm that's pending, let's say next week, Jim's job is to be on the air from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night. So I'll go in at 3, do all the prep, boom, jump on the air and start rocking and rolling. This time of the year, a lot of times we'll preempt because of the tornado risk. And that makes for some busy, long days.
Do you also have to do promotion? Appearances like that?
Yeah, we just had a huge upfront campaign, which is our big advertising. Hey, look at us. Here's what we're doing. Here's where we're going with our company. And that was really cool. To be me and Maria LaRosa hosted that, and it was really cool. Because I love David. I love our CEO, and I love what he stands for, and I love what he, his vision for the company. So it was great to be asked to be involved in that. And now you take me out of the office for a couple of days. Now, and it's tough because, oh gosh, what are we going to do? Cantore's going on this he's going to this conference. We want him to speak at this conference, but yet we got a tornado outbreak. The weather's always going to take precedence. If it's a big enough event, I have to be there. I want to be there. The Weather Channel expects me to be there.
Going back to that upfront, where does the Weather Channel see itself in the next few years?
That's an interesting question, actually. I think that our goal immediately is to nail long form. Get some of these shows on the air at night where it's a home run, where when the weather calms down or when it's not active, people come to us because they're enthusiasts. They love the weather and they want to learn about disasters that have maybe wiped out the planet in the past. What would be the end-all weather disaster? How big could a hurricane actually get that goes to New York City? Those kind of things. I mean, what's it like to be on a Coast Guard rescue vessel or even a shrimping boat in the middle of a storm? That kind of stuff.
What's been the biggest challenge for you in your career?
Without question, managing personal and work, no doubt. And it's not because they're killing me. I mean, the weather dictates how much I work, and sometimes it is brutal. But okay, here we go. Daughter's graduation, May 24th. I'm like, no tornado outbreaks. So I always felt like I got to be out there. I've only missed 2 Christmases and 1 birthday because of the weather. But you know what? I'll always remember that I missed 2 Christmases and 1 birthday. It's hard because even when I'm there with my kids and something's going on, I feel that constant pull and tug toward I need to be there because it's kind of my responsibility. But yet, so is this. So you got this guy on this shoulder, the other guy on this shoulder. You should be in the storm. No, you need to be with your kids. Come on, man, you're missing it. So it's a little schizophrenia going on. But it's self-induced. And at the end of the day, I figured it out. The family's going to take priority. And what's nice is I think this company realizes that. I think they give you the leeway to have that happen. And now that, the fact that we've been sold has finally settled out, everybody knows what they're doing, it's worked out good. As to where we go, I think, the Weather Channel's very heavy into digital. Do we get sold again? Do we get sold as the Weather Channel TV and then the Weather Channel digital? I don't know. Because now a lot of that stuff is already placed in New York, but yet the broadcast facility's down here. So do you let that part go and then just take care of the digital up there? Who knows? All speculation. I'm just going to worry about the weather. I'm going to worry about not showing up in New York City and having the mayor shut down the city, or going to a winter classic and having it not rain when I say it's not going to rain. So that's the kind of stuff I want to do.
How has the perception of meteorology and meteorologists changed since you started?
Oh my gosh, weather got hip in the 90s. Movies, commercials, people came out of the closet. I mean, I can't tell you how many emails or written letters I used to get saying, oh my God, Cantore, you make this so fun. I want to do what you're doing. I want to do what you're doing. I wish I did what you did, And I always tell them about my dad. That's really, I got to thank my dad, because he's the one that told me to go study the weather. And I think people think weather's cool. Even today, I get tweets. Oh my gosh, I want Cantore. So when they found out I was in Costa Rica, it's like, oh my gosh, tough assignment. It was. People don't know that I'm not there on vacation, but the fact that I get to travel. I think everybody wants to travel. They want to see the world, right? Everybody has a bucket list of different places they want to go. So in a way, I kind of live that for them.
Is there a place you haven't been that you'd like to go?
Yeah, I want to go to China. Oh my gosh, there's a great story. Beijing Olympics. We just got bought by NBC. Cantore, you're going to the Olympics. I'm like, yes. It's during hurricane season, but I'm going to go. They didn't finalize the deal through the government's eyes. So they didn't want to start mixing the pieces. So I got pulled. But, China, I want to go to China, Thailand, the East. I want to do that because I've been to Australia. I've been to, Alaska, Hawaii, maybe some of these other places like the Galapagos. I think that'd be kind of cool too. Spain. I'd like to go to Spain. Paris. There was a train ride away. That is talk about a dedication. I mean, you don't realize when you go over there for the Olympics, it is just straight television. And now with digital and everything, I mean, wow. People don't realize the awesome effort that NBC puts on for the Olympics. I mean, it is a tremendous production. I mean, you could not be prouder to be part of anything than the Olympics. I'm going to tell you that right now. At the end, I'm going to say, I was so proud to be a part of the Weather Channel and what I did, but I was so proud to be a part and asked to go attend the Olympics with NBC. That's how awesome it is to be with them, really. History and the way that they do it. I mean, just an awesome experience, really.
What don't your fans know about you?
That I love country music. Big country music fan. Everyone's like, Cantore country, really? I'm like, yes. It's all about life. It's all about growing up in Vermont. It's all about. I just come from a small town in America. I'm just a small town kid. I really am. I'm pretty simple. At the end of the day, I love to plant things. I'm a big collector of Japanese maples. I love to play sports. I love to play golf. I love to play when I was working mornings, I could play softball at night. Now when you're working nights, you can't play softball. I'm a big Yankees fan. I mean, I really love the Yankees. I enjoy my time with the Packers. I'm a big Packers fan. Gosh, what else? I mean, you know what? I like being dad. I really love being dad. To hang out with my kids, I mean, I need that in my life. I have 2 kids with Fragile X syndrome, which, in the simplest definition, you could say it's the most common form of learning disability under the autism spectrum. People have heard of autism, mostly. Asperger's is another one of those. Asperger's, I think it is. And also Fragile X. There's a lot of similarities in those 3, but the learning disability part comes from the Fragile X. And so my daughter has it and my son has it. It's more common in boys, and it's worse in boys because boys only have 1 X chromosome. And so with that being fractured or broken, information doesn't get as well. It also shows up in physical features. I mean, I'm very lucky. I have 2 very highly functional Fragile X children. My daughter's going to college next year, which is just fantastic. And granted, I don't know if she's ever going to be on her own. She's going to contribute to society. She's going to be a happy person. And at the end of the day, isn't that what every parent wants for their kids? Really? Yeah. And so is little Ben. He's going to do the same thing. He's going to be a happy guy. And if he's, helping take somebody's groceries out to their car for a few hours a day, then you know what? He's contributing to society. And that's all I want for my kids, for them to be happy and for them to be contributing.
That's beautiful. Have they picked up on your passion for weather?
What's interesting is my daughter kind of loves it when we're out on vacation. We usually go down to Florida and go to Sandestin. God, I love that. There's another place I love, Sandestin. The people are just so nice. That whole concept is just wonderful. And when people recognize me, Christy gets a kick out of it because her dad's got that star power now. And so I'm like, Christy, I really don't want to. She's like, yeah, that's my dad. That's my dad. You want to get a picture with him? I'll take your picture. My little publicist here. Thank you, Christy. Okay, let's take from your vacation time. Let's go ahead. I mean, I don't mind. You know what? Here's the deal. I don't mind when people come up and talk to me. It's very flattering. It's very nice. But when I'm with my kids, that's the only time I just was like, I don't have a lot of time with them. So we can chat about climate change later or something.
Okay, let's stop and change.